surprised my cheating wife with divorce papers at her secret hotel getaway affair. There was a guy by the name of John who was contentedly wed to Sarah. After 10 years of dating, they had established a loving, dependable, and devoted existence. But little did John realize that betrayal was about to wreck his seemingly ideal marriage. John first became aware of Sarah's altered conduct. It looked as though she was aloof and distracted. She frequently made up reasons to go out late or take excursions without him. Initially, John dismissed it, supposing Sarah may be experiencing stress at work or going through a difficult time. But as time passed, he continued to sense that something wasn't quite right. One day, John discovered a slew of damning text messages on Sarah's phone, which validated his suspicions. The communications, which were from a man by the name of Mark, were full of sexually suggestive words and arrangements for covert meetings. John had a gut-punched sensation. How could Sarah treat him in this way? He believed their marriage was solid and committed. John chose to speak with Sarah about the messages because he was determined to find out what was going on. She first denied everything, saying the communications were innocuous, and that Mark was simply a co-worker buddy. Nevertheless, Sarah eventually broke down and admitted to having an affair when John kept pressing her for the truth. John was inconsolable. He was in shock at how cruelly the lady he trusted and loved had deceived him. He experienced shock, grief, and incredulity all at once. Even though it hurt, John realized he had to act in his own best interests and the best interests of his future. John finally took the painful choice to file for divorce after giving it a lot of thought. He could not stay with someone who had so blatantly betrayed his confidence and ruined his marriage. However, John was reluctant to approach Sarah in their cozy home. In order to give her the impression that he was serious about breaking up with her, he wanted to surprise her. John then came up with an idea. He would deliver divorce papers as a surprise to Sarah when she was gone with Mark on one of their secret hotel stays. He was aware that this would be the ideal chance to confront her and break their marriage for good. John attempted to be encouraging as Sarah prepared for her weekend vacation, advising her to enjoy herself and have a pleasant trip. But he was secretly boiling with rage and bitterness. The fact that Sarah was continuing her affair right in front of him infuriated him. John didn't take long to implement his plan once Sarah departed. After hurriedly gathering all the required documentation, he took a car to Sarah and Mark's hotel. John could feel his pulse thumping with anxious anticipation as he walked into the foyer. Though he was aware that this would be one of the worst times of his life, he also understood that it was essential for his own recovery and sense of closure. John walked up to the front desk and asked for Sarah's room number, his hands shaking. Reluctantly giving out the information, the receptionist paused for a second before noticing the resolve in John's eyes. Anxiety rising in his stomach, John thanked her and headed for the lift. John mentally practiced his response as the elevator headed up to the floor where Sarah's room was. He was aware that he had to control his emotions and maintain his composure. However, he was secretly preparing for Sarah's possible response to his unexpected visit. At last, the elevator made a dinging sound to indicate that John had arrived at his destination. Taking a deep breath, he moved out into the corridor and looked for Sarah's room number on the doors. He waited a bit, his fingers lingering over the doorknob. After he had located it, John let out a trembling breath, plucked up the confidence, and knocked on the door. He heard footsteps coming from within after a tense minute of stillness. The door opened, revealing Sarah standing there, her expression bewildered and shocked at seeing her husband. "John, what are you doing here?" With a hint of anxiety in her voice, she questioned. John held out the stack of papers he was holding without saying anything. When Sarah recognized what they were, her eyes became wide with shock. Her hands trembling, she cast a quick glance down at the papers and noticed the words "divorce petition" emblazoned at the top. Sarah glanced back up at John, tears welling up in her eyes at the knowledge that her marriage was really finished. "I'm so sorry, John," she said, her voice almost audible above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you." John, though, had had enough of her justifications. Nothing she said would make him change his mind about ending their marriage. Sarah stood at the doorway, alone with her remorse and shame, while he turned on his heel and left without saying anything more. John had a whirlwind of emotions as he drove out of the motel. He was grieving about his marriage ending and the life he had known coming to an end. He was at last free of the hurt and betrayal that had plagued him for so long, but there was also a sense of peace and release. John concentrated on starting again and reconstructing his life in the days and weeks that followed. It wasn't always easy, and he occasionally still battled emotions of grief and rage. However, he started to recover from the scars of his failed marriage and look forward to the future with hope and optimism, thanks to the support of his friends and family. Sarah was left to pick up the pieces of her life after it was destroyed and accept the repercussions of her actions. She would live the rest of her life regretting her decisions and wondering what may have happened if she had remained true to her husband. She recognized that she had made a grave error in breaking John's confidence. John was dealing with a maelstrom of emotions in the days that followed the altercation at the motel. A part of him was relieved that he could now finally face Sarah and put an end to their poisonous relationship, but a bigger part of him was devastated by the loss of the life they had previously had. John sought solace and direction from his network of friends and family while he processed his emotions. As he opened out to them, they listened carefully and offered words of support and confidence that he had chosen the best course of action for himself. Throughout it all, John's closest buddy Mike was there for him. Since they were young, Mike had supported John, and he wasn't going to let him go through this trying period by himself. They spoke, laughed, and reminisced for many hours about the wonderful moments they had had together over the years. Mike complimented his friend on his actions, saying, "You did the right thing, John," as they were sitting on John's porch one evening. Simply put, Sarah didn't deserve you. You deserve to be loved and respected without conditions. John nodded as he continued to stare at the sun as it sank below the horizon. "I know you're right, Mike," he muttered to himself. "You know, it still hurts to believe that our union amounted to nothing more than deceit." Mike extended his arm to give John a supportive squeeze on the shoulder. "I know, buddy," he mutely remarked. "However, you underestimate your strength. I assure you that you will overcome this." And John managed to get through it. He pushed himself into his work in the weeks that followed, taking comfort in the regularity he knew from his career as a software developer. In order to deal with the pain of his broken marriage and process his feelings, he also began going to therapy sessions. John started to gradually put his life back together, piece by piece. He relocated to a new apartment, furnished it with furnishings that matched his taste, and began pursuing interests and hobbies he had shelved throughout his marriage. John was really passionate about exercise in particular. Though he had always loved being active, he suddenly found himself spending even more time exercising and looking after his physical well-being. He signed up for group exercise courses at a nearby gym, where he made new acquaintances and discovered a feeling of solidarity via challenging himself. Yet even with his newfound freedom and independence, John was unable to get rid of the loneliness that was always present in the back of his mind. He yearned to find someone to replace the emptiness in his heart because he missed the intimacy and company he had enjoyed with Sarah. John made the decision to re-enter the dating scene after finding new purpose. In an attempt to locate someone who matched his interests and beliefs, he made an online dating profile and began swiping through prospective matches. The encounter was intimidating at first. With all of the applications and algorithms available these days, John felt completely out of his element while navigating the dating scene. However, as he grew more at ease putting himself out there, he started to take pleasure in the experience of meeting new people and developing deeper relationships with them. Subsequently, John encountered someone unexpectedly who made his heart skip a beat. Emily was her name, and she was not like any else he had ever met. John hadn't felt seen and understood in a long time, but Emily, who was intelligent, humorous, and caring, had a way of making him feel that way. John and Emily clicked right away, and soon they were spending all of their free time together, chatting and joking like old friends. After feeling lost and shattered for years, John couldn't believe how fortunate he was to have discovered someone like Emily. Emily gave him a sense of aliveness once more. John couldn't help but feel appreciative of the surprising turn his life had taken as their connection grew. He had believed that being married to Sarah would be the end of his journey, but now he understood that it was only the start of a brand new chapter, full with limitless prospects for development. John also understood that although he would always have the wounds from his past, they had made him stronger. He was resolved to apply the insightful lessons he had gained about love, trust, and resiliency to create a better future for himself and the people he loved. John was filled with anticipation and hope for the years ahead as he considered what lay ahead. With Emily by his side and a renewed sense of purpose propelling him on, he felt prepared to take on whatever obstacles life could present, confident in his ability to overcome them with bravery and fortitude. John couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed since confronting Sarah at the hotel as he and Emily's connection became stronger. He was incredibly appreciative of Emily and the love and joy she consistently brought into his life. John persisted in concentrating on his personal development and recovery with Emily's help. He dealt with the trauma and ongoing anguish from his broken marriage in his many therapy appointments. John became more aware of who he was and what he wanted out of life by reflecting on himself and going through introspection. The value of open communication and honesty in a partnership was among the most important things John took away from his previous relationship. He made a conscious effort to be honest and upfront with Emily about his emotions, worries, and anxieties, because he understood that a solid foundation of trust was necessary for a happy and long-lasting partnership. Emily freely shared her own problems and victories from the past with John, returning his vulnerability with them. They forged a relationship based on mutual respect, comprehension, and steadfast support for each other's development and well-being. John and Emily started to see themselves together in the future as their love for one another grew. They shared their objectives and plans for the future, ranging from raising a family someday to pursuing careers. Knowing Emily was the girl he wanted by his side no matter what, John was filled with enthusiasm and eagerness for the life they were creating together. John was able to enjoy his newfound happiness with Emily, but he was still burdened by regret and sorrow about his failed marriage to Sarah. Frequently, he would ponder over what could have happened if circumstances had been different, if he had been able to save their relationship before it was too late. John once stumbled onto an old photo of himself and Sarah from their wedding day while going through old pictures kept in a dusty box in his attic. A flood of nostalgia and a twinge of melancholy for the love they had lost overcame him as he gazed at the picture of the two of them grinning and laughing. John did, however, also have a feeling of acceptance and closure amid the bittersweet recollections. Even though his marriage to Sarah had ended in tragedy, he came to understand that it had also given him invaluable insight into perseverance, love, and forgiveness. Though he was appreciative of their time together and the memories they had made, he also understood that it was time to move on from the past and welcome Emily's future. John felt a wave of tranquility sweep over him as he sadly placed the picture back into the box and shut the lid. He was aware that the wounds from his past would never truly go away, but he also understood that they had shaped the man he was today, a stronger, more perceptive, and more caring individual. John saw Emily waiting for him at the bottom of the stairs after coming down from the attic, a kind grin on her face. John realized he was right where he was supposed to be at that very moment, surrounded by the love and support of the lady he loved the most. John and Emily set off on a voyage full of love, joy, and boundless opportunities. They took on life's obstacles head-on, certain that they could withstand any storm together as long as they had each other. John had a wave of thankfulness for his second opportunity at happiness as they strolled hand in hand into the twilight. He was excited to see what the future contained for them, both since he knew that the best was still to come, especially with Emily at his side.